Hello everyone and welcome to another most interesting game. It's from round 7 of the Superbet Chess Classic. I know you guys were expecting maybe a game from round 9, but round 9 was not all that eventful, and this is one of the games that I did not show, and I really wanted to show it to you guys because it's simply incredible. Before I forget, congratulations to England for beating Croatia in the football European Championship. I'm not really a football fan myself, but whenever there's a European Championship or World's Championship, I watch that, as pretty much everyone watches that, so I know what everyone is talking about. But yeah, it was a very impressive display of skill. So congratulations on that. If any of you guys maybe follow football. Now that being said, let's check out this game. So it's Caruana versus Mamedyarov, and it's I don't know if it's the best game. It's we've seen so many great games here because it's been a while since we've been covering classical games, but this here is truly a masterpiece. So I know you guys are going to enjoy it. And before we check it out, I will even include something that I haven't in some time, a photo from this event, as some of you guys still don't believe that this is actually an over-the-board event. Here you go. There's Mamedyarov and Fabi from round 7, courtesy of Leonard Otis. Fabi with the white pieces, and usually when I see a photo of a chess player or even two chess players, there will often be something weird about the photo. It's very rare that you see a photo with two chess players that there's nothing weird about it. But this photo, I can't find anything odd with this photo. So maybe you guys could help me. Maybe you can spot something. Like I said, it's incredibly unusual that a photo where two chess players are presented has nothing wrong with it. Or something should be out of place, something should be weird, but I'm just not seeing it. So maybe there's a lot of you guys, maybe you can spot something that I'm missing here. So that being said, let's check out the game. Fabi has the white pieces and he opens with e4, and this is going to be a brutal game right from the start. We have e5 by Mamedyarov, knight to f3, knight to c6, and bishop to b5. So just a normal Ruy Lopez for now. We have knight to f6, the Berlin defense, and now d3. We have bishop to c5 and now knight to c3. And here, the usual way to play this is you want to go d6 or you want to maybe castle, then just continue developing with normal moves. But here Mamedyarov goes for knight to d4, and it's a very rare idea. It's seen in a lot of openings, like in the Rubinstein variation, for example. But here it's extremely rare. Only a handful of games where played with this exact same line. And now the problem is the light square bishop is under attack, and you don't usually want to grab this. And the way black wants to play this is to allow white to capture this pawn, d6, push away the knight back, and then bishop to g4 to pin the knight, as the knight is already under attack. But Fabi not interested in going for that. Fabi just retreats with the bishop, with bishop to a4. There is one interesting game. Wesley So played it against Dominguez Perez in the St. Louis Champion Showdown in 2017 that was again very interesting, and the line basically goes knight captures on e5, black will castle, and then just bishop back to c4, d6, and now white will sacrifice here on f7, rook captures, bishop captures, king captures, and now h3. And this is now, although white is down a pawn, white is down a piece, white is up 2 pawns, and white should be better here. But in this one notable game between two very strong grandmasters, black was victorious. So it's hard to say if this is good or bad, because there's no there are no actual games between very strong players in this opening, and well, in this one instance, black just won. So here, like I said, Fabi avoids all of this, and after knight to d4, he just sidesteps with the bishop to a4. And now there is one game where queen to e7 was played, but here we have c6, and it is already as of move 6 that we have a completely new game. So let's see what Mamedyarov prepared here. And this is, I think, exactly what he wanted to do. It's have a completely new game so early on, get Fabi completely out of his preparation, and then try and do some damage with the black pieces. So here we have castles by Fabi, and now d6. And only now Fabi grabs this knight, because now bishop to g4 is coming. You do not want to allow this. And h3 might be unnecessary if you don't need to play it. So here knight captures on d4, bishop captures on d4, and now h3. And here Fabi says, I've solved all of my problems, not much you can do here. It's just a very nice position for white, and I'm just going to continue playing this. However, and you know, that's a double exclamation mark. However, Mamedyarov plays g5 here, and this is just Fabi knew here that he ran into some serious preparation, and that's why I've decided to put this position on the thumbnail. Now he wants to play g4. He wants to open up the position, play rook g8, and put some pressure to the white king. And this bishop here is just a monster, as you'll see later in the game. And it's not a great move because there is one way that white can play this and well, just not get shattered, but it's a move you might not think of at first. So feel free to pause the video already here to find basically the only refutation of this g5 move while I give you a couple of seconds. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on not grabbing the pawn. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's knight to d5. This is the move that allows white to keep the advantage. And, well, just say that... okay, sorry about... Sorry about that. Had to check if it was any urgent baby stuff, but luckily it's not. So after knight to d5, what do you play here? Well, you cannot capture with c captures on d5, so you could capture with the knight. That doesn't really do anything. So you might continue with the attack after rook to g8, but now c3. And this is the point. After the bishop retreats, now we eliminate the dark square bishop, and that's it. There is no more danger from this diagonal. White will capture, and now bishop to b3. And here, you don't have to worry about... you have to worry a little bit, but there's nothing that black can do to actually cause damage. If g4, you're just going to play h4. If you're going to go knight to h5, try and, for example, grab the pawn, just g3. And white is incredibly solid here. So after this g5 move, Fabi did not play knight to d5. He played knight to e2, but now... you can't really do it like this because now this bishop will be a monster for the rest of the game, and Mamedyarov uses it with deadly purpose. Here he goes back, bishop to b6, now c3, of course you want to play d4 at some point and block this diagonal, and now rook to g8. We have d4 by Fabi, just not, getting rid of this bishop, maybe if only temporarily, but getting rid of it at least for now, but at the price of the e4 pawn. So Mamedyarov grabs it, and now bishop back to c2. So you give up the pawn, this bishop again comes alive. Now you can't really move the knight, otherwise you're going to lose the h7 pawn. So d5, defending the knight, and here bishop captures on e4. We have d captures, and now d captures on e5. And here Fabi says, all right, you had your fun, the attack is over, let's trade queens, and okay, I'm out of the woods. But Mamedyarov says nope, he just trades queens, captures, and now plays g4. And again, what do you play here? Of course, you cannot allow the g file to be open, so h4 and now g3. And this was the point of it all. Now, the pawn cannot capture the bishop, like I said, a monster here, and the knight cannot capture due to the same reason. We just captured the knight, and the pawn still can't capture. The pawn is pinned. So after g3, we have knight to d4, now blocking the bishop on b6, but now, again, not rushing with capturing this, but rather bishop back to d8. Mamedyarov playing this like a machine. Now saying, okay, I'm just going to capture this, and then I'm going to capture this while the bishop is protecting it. So Fabi has the capture on g3. We have captures, rook captures, and now rook to e1, going after the pawn. And now, while you could grab the h4 pawn, there's even a stronger move, and that is rook to g4. Now you're defending this pawn. You are now ready to capture this pawn. And there's only one thing Fabi can do. Bishop to g5. You keep the pawn alive like this. Mamedyarov grabs the bishop, h captures on g5, and now again not going for this and allowing this capture. This e4 pawn is incredibly important. Not only is it a pass pawn, but it's really just a nice bone in white's throat. So here, king to e7. Now we want to develop the bishop and bring the other rook over to the g file. And it's not even about the pawn. You just want to open up the g file for your rooks to attack the white king. So here, rook 8 to d1. Now Fabi has some ideas of maybe knight b3, knight c5, then put pressure along the d file. Bishop to d7, and now what do you play here? Well, Fabi is an incredibly strong guy, especially in classical, and he's a very, very resourceful guy. And here he plays e6. And now what do you play here? His hope is that Mamedyarov captures with the bishop. And now if knight captures on e6, f captures, we have rook to d4 with a double attack on the pawn, and that's it. He can somewhat equalize. For example, rook g8, we're going to capture here. We're going to trade rooks here, and of course rook captures here. And you're down a pawn, but Fabi is very comfortable playing this position, being down a pawn. So here, instead, after e6, Mamedyarov, of course, keeps his bishop on the board. He plays f captures on e6, and now comes Fabi's real idea, and that is g6. That's the point. Now if rook captures, you can eliminate this pawn, and then you're back in the game. But not what Mamedyarov had in mind. He plays h captures on g6, and now he's up 2 pawns, but at least Fabi was able to close off the g file, which was his actual plan all along. So here we have knight to b3, now preparing to shift the knight over to c5 to do some damage here, but now e5, making room for this bishop to be developed here, and then you will be defending this pawn very nicely. So here, if you go knight to c5 with this plan, then bishop to f5, and there's nothing much that white can do. You're defending the d7 square, and of course if captures here, then rook b8 just wins the game. The knight has to move, or you're just gonna lose it. Knight to c5, rook captures here, and that's it. Mamedyarov just wins this. So instead, after e5, we have knight to a5, now going after the pawn like this, but it's not much better, and Fabi really doesn't have a better move. So here, bishop to e6. Now, Fabi was not interested in this. He just wanted to bring the knight to c4 to kind of activate it like this, but Mamedyarov says, nope, that's not happening. We have rook to d8. Now, with ideas of doubling up either on the d or on the e file to start getting rid of these doubled pawns, as doubled pawns are easy targets for the rooks. But now rook to b8, seemingly a weird move, but it really does a lot. It really keeps this knight on a5, and the knight now really doesn't have all that many squares where the knight can go to. You can try bringing it back to b3, but then we're going to play b6, and again, the knight will not have any squares. It's just going to be a very, very sad knight. So there's time to worry about that knight. Fabi starts by b4. He wants to play a4 and then try and bring the knight back into the game. King to f6, now improving the position of the king, and now a4. We have rook to g3 now. The c3 pawn has been weakened. And here, Fabi again has to decide whether he wants to play this passively with something like rook to c2, then rook to d3 can come. Or does he want to try and still get back into the game and grab this pawn? Maybe he can do it like this. He decides to grab the pawn, but now comes bishop to d5. And this is one very important in-between move before actually grabbing the c3 pawn. So a nice bishop to d5 Zwischenzug, and now what do you do here? The rook has to move. We have rook to h4, but now comes the real problem for Fabi. Rook captures on c3. And what do you do now? There are no squares for the knight, and b6 will trap the knight. There's no escaping that. But Fabi, again, incredibly resilient. He finds a way. Rook to h7. Now the threat is just to pick up the b7 pawn. So Mamedyarov's move doesn't really come as a surprise. He plays b6, chases away this knight, and now knight captures on c6. We have bishop captures on c6. The rook cannot capture, as then rook captures bishop, and now comes rook to c7. Here, Fabi's idea is I'm just going to play rook d6 check and win back my piece. But here we have rook to c1 check, king to f2, and now rook to f8. And this rook to f8 is just a brilliant maneuver. Point being that now if rook to d6 check, you don't get to win the bishop because the king sidesteps with check, and that's it. Then the bishop can escape. For example, king to e3, we're going to play rook to c3 with check, and after king to d2, rook to a3. So, okay, you can win the bishop. Rook captures here, but now rook to f2 with check, and what do you play? King to e1, and now rook captures on g2. And now when your king is in this kind of a situation where it's just, really being threatened by everything, just rook to, for example, rook to h3 to h1 will be checkmate. White will have to spend all of his moves trying to avoid checkmate, and then you're just going to pick up even more material, and you're already up 2 pawns. So this will be completely winning for him. So instead, after rook to f8, we have b5, trapping the bishop right away, but it doesn't matter. King to e6 with check, king to g3, and now rook to c3 with check. King h2, now comes rook to h8 with check. And here, we have king to g1, and now we get this position where Mamedyarov has a beautiful maneuver to win the game. But I'm not just going to show it to you. Of course, we'll figure it out all by yourself, not using any assistance. So while I give you a couple of seconds, have at it. So for those of you who were able to do it, congratulations on finding this beautiful maneuver. And for those of you who just want to enjoy the show, it's rook to h1 with check. That's the good stuff. And here, it doesn't matter what you do. It simply doesn't matter. King captures on h1 was played in the game. I will, however, show what happens if you sidestep this check. Still, black will just follow you. Rook to f1 check. He's going to say, take the rook, and then, of course, after you take the rook, we're just going to play bishop captures on g2, and then pick up the rook on c7. For example, rook captures on g2, rook captures on c7, and now you are up 2 pawns, and it doesn't matter, you're going to win back this pawn, but king f5 attacking the rook, rook h6, and now rook to c1 with check. King e2, now rook to a1, and now these pawns will fall. If rook to h4 defending the pawn, you just block it, e4. And now after a few more checks, we're just going to hide the king, rook h5 check, king d4, and now these pawns will fall, and you are simply up too much material, and you're going to win the game. On the other hand, if you sidestep with king to f2, rook to f1 check, and now you sidestep again with king to e2, then you just, align yourself with the bishop, bishop to b5 check, we give up the bishop, and then we again pick up this guy here. So again, king captures here, and again, it's two pawns up, completely winning. So after this rook to h1 check, Fabi said, okay, obviously I have to capture the rook. He played king captures on h1, and now bishop captures on g2. Not king captures, rook captures was played, and now rook captures on c7. Rook captures on g6, king to d5, and now, again, if you try and defend the a4 pawn somehow, maybe try, if you go here, then we can just block it. If you go here with the idea of just bringing the rook here, then we can even trade rooks right away. Rook h7 check, king here, we're going to deliver check, and after the king moves, we're just going to trade here. And of course, being up a pawn here, completely winning, we're going to eliminate these guys, and that's it. So after king to d5, Fabi tried one last idea, and that is a5. And now, while you can play b captures on a5, Mamedyarov says, nope, I'm going to show you how this is played without even thinking. He plays king to c5. We have a captures, and now rook to e6 by Fabi going after the pawn. But Mamedyarov, in incredibly great style, gives it up. He plays king captures on b5, rook captures on e5 with check, and now rook to c5. He says, that's it. This is completely winning for me, because if Fabi trades here, just captures, king can also capture, doesn't really matter. And now the white king is simply too slow. We're going to play c4, king f1, king f2, we're going to play c3. And now after king e2, we just bring the king into the game. King to d1, we're going to play king to b3. And after king to c1, of course, c2 wins the game for a player of their caliber. This is you don't even have to calculate that. This just plays by itself. So after rook to c5, Fabi of course cannot trade. He plays rook to e1, and now Mamedyarov shows again why it doesn't matter. He plays rook to g5, well, it was in this position on move 48 that Fabiano Caruana resigned the game, as there is nothing more to be done here. Point is that now the king is completely cut off from the game. The black rook controls the g file completely, and that's it. The white rook will not be able to stop the king alone. You will simply sidestep the checks and then continue pushing your pawn, and that's it. The white king will just be a helpless spectator for the rest of the game. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. And like I said, the last round was a bit of a snooze fest, so I decided to show this one by the winner of the tournament, Shakhriyar Mamedyarov. And these are the standings of the Superbet Chess Classic. So Mamedyarov wins the entire thing with 6 out of 9. Incredible result without a single loss. Levon trailing with 5 out of 9. He lost that game to Mamedyarov, and that really meant a lot, as you can see here. Grishuk and Wesley also with 5 out of 9. Then Anish Giri and Temur Rajabov both on 4.5 out of 9, both on 50%, perfectly balanced as all things should be. And then with 3.5, we have the Romanian superstars Lupulescu and the Deac, and Fabi and Maxim Vachier-Lagrave with 3.5 also. Sorry. I see now I see the standings are not finished, so it was still being played. So let me just quickly check if they're still playing. Yeah, they're still playing. Fabi is still playing Deac in the in the final round. They're still trying to do it. So completely disregard this because, for now, Fabi and Dak are in a drawn position, so it will be half a point for both of them. So what does that mean for us? For Mamedyarov, it doesn't really mean anything. He's first, however you put it, but Fabi could overtake. Perhaps overtake both Deac and Lupulescu if he somehow manages to win this game. But we'll see how it goes. But Mamedyarov wins it, so only watch the absolute top of the standings. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Really incredible preparation by Mamedyarov, just completely busting open a new position on move 6 with that c6 idea, and then just g5. I mean, beautiful stuff. This is what we always enjoy seeing. So hope you guys enjoyed that. So yeah, that's the game. Once again, hope you enjoyed it. I would like to thank Happy Birthday S. Paul, Avijit Banerjee, Tsankot Solov, Western Carpet Cleaning Incorporated, and Isaac Garuda for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot. I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of, everything that is happening in the chess world, checking up on your wonderful suggestions, and probably, most likely, continuing the Morphy saga. So thank you all. I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.